Hey everyone, today's video is about various approaches to tonalism. Here we'll explore various styles of doing tonalism, for instance, a Barbizon school or American tonalism with varying contrasts, a more finished approach similar to Barbizon school's Koro, or other approaches such as impressionistic way of doing it, very similar to Sicily, or nocturnal way of tonalism. So let's look at all the approaches. So in this painting, generally we are looking at a mood and it definitely fits the tonalism description. And this is the oil sketch that I did in front of the scene. It was the last light of that day. And generally tonalism follows the shadow patterns, and then it follows a color that is mostly golden or silver. But here we are going around it and trying to depict a very colorful scene. You can see that we are using very bright blues and lighter blues, violets, and whole spectrum of this particular scene. So gradually, when we'll be moving forward with everything, we will be mixing them, and then again, use brighter colors to experiment with the tonalism concept. Here, the shadows are dominant too, but here mostly the light and the spectrum, and also colors are the more dominant factors. But once we look at the other videos that are attached to it, this is a combination of previous videos. We will follow the traditionalist approach, but here we are going towards a more finished impressionistic way. And you can see there are more colors being introduced and will be enhancing the rich color experience into this. And previous layer have been merged before putting on this particular layer. So we are following a very finished approach, but also breaking away from the tradition of tonalism by using more colors. But once we establish the shadows, it'll look very close to any other tonalist painting. So this is one of the first videos that I did, and there was no sort of verbal communication in that, but here I'm adding that again. And you can see I'm playing with all the oranges and reds and yellows and violets, pinks. So a lot of colors to add, and also focusing on the immediacy that was present in my sketch that I did in front of this particular scene. And it was just there for 5 minutes, I think. It wasn't anything more than that. So it was a very beautiful experience to paint. And here you can see that I'm enhancing all the colors, and gradually will be focusing on the shadow areas. Now even here you can see that I'm playing with the darker colors as well. Here are darker patches to that red color mixed with some amount of burnt sienna into the red and creating darker patterns. Here are some highlights, and light is very limited, but here I'm exploring what I can do to enhance it more. And here are some marks that will indicate that the sun has gone down completely. It's just the twilight that is visible. And here are the darks. It's very dark, mixing with ultramarine and burnt sienna. And here I wanted to have the crispest darks. I mean, it's actually very blackish, and then gradually introducing some to the floor. And I'm paying particular attention to the shapes because I feel the shapes are also important in tonalism, because shape and color, they both add to our sensory appeal to the painting. And here I'm introducing the lines. They are all twisted compared to the photograph that I could take. This is more interesting than the real shapes. And again, we'll be introducing some foliage to those lines with a big brush, and won't be doing too much, because in tonalism generally we will play with the paint structure rather than the line quality. And here you can see I'm using my fullest concentration to paint those foliage, and also trying to maintain the underneath layer not to damage these darker colors, because that is also important, because this is completely against the light and darkness is just just very near. And this is the final painting and the result. Hey guys, this is a video about tonalism. This time it's traditional in approach, so keep watching. Okay, so I'll be using flake white hue, cadmium lemon, yellow ochre, and light red and ivory black for this painting. Cadmium lemon is only for warming up purposes. So here I'm putting some oil onto the canvas surface, and then yellow ochre. Yellow ochre will be the main color. Now in this painting, I'll be going traditional in result and following a modern, painting method. And this is the sort of, painting method that I learned from an artist called Dennis Sheehan. So I liked his approach. So, I followed it to some degree. Now here you can see that I'm wiping some of the areas, and I don't use tubs that often. I'm using mostly linseed oil, that's all. And I'm wiping with a tissue and sometimes with a rag, and that produces a good result. So even if you make a mistake, you can wipe it off and start fresh. But here, as you can see, I'm using a very thick brush, which is a fan brush, and trying to get to some sort of a concrete shape. But it doesn't really matter. You can develop it later as well. And I am not aware of anything at all. I mean, what this scene might look like. We are going to explore it, explore the possibilities, and then derive at something which looks realistic. But eventually this is like a golden evening situation where the light is very little, and we are going to follow that idea. And sometimes it's misty, so do check out my misty landscape video that I showed in the beginning, so which is more of a finished approach in tonalism. Now, whatever paintings that I've seen from the tonalist artists of USA, they were producing a traditional looking painting, but in a more abstract way. But it's not about technique, it's about the result that we are producing. So if it looks traditional, then it is good enough. But whether you're following a finished approach or a direct approach, impressionistic approach, then that might be your choice. Apart from the Americans, there were a lot of tonalistic paintings done in Europe by Impressionists and Barbizon school artists and many others. But the Americans gave it the name, and it's highly poetic in nature. And most of the time, it's following a dawn scene, or maybe a misty scene, or absolutely a sunset scene like this one. So you can see that how roughly I am painting, and there is no intention to do the details at all. But eventually we can, when all the things are put in place, then we can start detailing, and eventually it can become a very highly finished painting as well, with keeping the immediacy intact. Now, when we are talking about tonalism, it's important to let everybody know that there is a big flaw in today's paintings. In most cases, paintings lack something to communicate. I mean, painting is a tool to communicate an idea or a feeling or a mood or a story, whereas in most cases it's just the impressionistic thing. Even impressionists went away from that in later life. They wanted to create something more. So, the lack of communication is really impacting what art has to do in the society. Now, even if you're not trying to communicate a particular story or an event, then it is also important to create a mood painting so that the viewer can experience some sort of upliftment in life. Now, as you can see that I'm, getting closer to what I wanted to achieve in this particular painting, a very peaceful mood in a way. Um, there wasn't anything concrete in my mind except that it has to be a very dark, evening scene. Now I'm using the white very carefully because I don't wish to distort or pollute uh, the initial shapes that are done by the transparent dark colors. And it's important to retain those. It's somehow similar to a watercolor where we try to prevent the whites to get muddy or anything, the polluted. So here it's important to prevent the darks as well. Approach is very similar. Now I am using the whites here to accentuate the scene. And you can see that there is a lot of yellow ochre mixed into it. Now adding just a little bit of cadmium lemon to retain the warmth. Otherwise, yellow ochre has a tendency to go towards pink because the inherent red into it. Now I am, focusing on the shape of the tree. At present, it doesn't look that good, but eventually we'll arrive at something. It's a process of trial and error, and eventually, if you wish to refine everything further, then it'll become a finished painting. So that is your choice. Here, this painting took just an hour, so nothing more than that. And this is a good approach. I mean, if you have something similar, you can take a palette and a piece of canvas like this and put it on an easel or inside your car, and you can paint plein air and just bring it back home. So this is a very easy approach. Just 4 or 5 colors, in general red, yellow, blue and white, and you can paint your scene. Even if you wish to ignore the reality, that is also there. So these are the purposes of art. Once you master the realism, then you move towards how to make this particular painting beyond what it appears in reality, to achieve some sort of a different reality. So that is what I'm doing, and or at least aiming at, to gain some sort of a spiritual aspect in my paintings. I have now moved on to this little puddle section, using just a little palette knife with vertical strokes and creating an interplay between the white and the yellow ochre, and also the darks, the reds, so just to create an impression. So here we are more close to Barbizon or American way of doing it. Now this is more or less the final result of the traditional approach, and after that we'll be looking at a more traditional finished approach. Hey guys, this video is about painting a misty morning scene. Here we aim to create this pearlescent, milky, moonstone-like effect, and it provides quite a challenge. Enjoy this little speed painting demo. Well, so here I am using an old canvas, and I didn't like the result. It was just for 1 hour demo and how to transfer a scene. But here I am painting another composition and mapping them out with darker colors. But here my objective is to create a silvery effect rather than a golden effect. So I'm more or less certain about what I'm going to do. And here you can see that all the whitish colors are put, and we'll be playing with all the pale colors rather than golden colors. So this is another approach to tonalism, and this is just the basic layer, and we will do a finished painting here rather than a sketchy or a very rough kind of handling. Here we will try to maintain all the shapes and everything. So even with a finished approach, there is a possibility of doing a great tonalist painting. Now here you can see that I'm employing a lot of different techniques such as scumbling, etc., to merge the top layer with the lower farm area, so that there is nothing that can be clearly distinct and not related to each other. We have to make this all the elements in the painting coherent. And now you can see that I'm playing with a lot of colors now, adding violets and even yellow ochres in the middle. But eventually, when the painting is done, you will see that it's actually a very pale painting, even with the presence of very bright colors. And here I'm painting the tree. Initially it's very dark, but we'll be adding more whites on top of this layer. And here I'm introducing some fogginess to the scene, and we'll be modifying that again and again. And also the shape itself of everything will be a consideration. Here you can see that I have added some pink colors and now adding pure whites on top of that to create that pearlescent mood. And there are various layers to that, and even some darker grayish layers. These are mostly violety or bluish layers on top of a warmish tone. So when you put something like that, when something has a lot of internal layers, they also play a part. And here you can see I'm paying great attention to this particular tree because this is the central figure, and sort of like the main player of this story. And now I'll be adding these white marks and also some pale lemon yellow kind of marks that are not very saturated, to indicate that this is a mustard field. And here are some darker elements to the bottom so that our focus is not lost, and there is a pathway as well. So a lot of layers on top of each other. So drying is very important in this kind of a painting, so that you can use saturated scumbly tones. And you can see that I'm merging the land area with the sky, so that it maintains that the fog is actually moving on top of the land. So here it is, the final picture almost. And here I'm making the shapes more prominent, and there are some story elements to it. I'll be putting those very quickly, and I'll introduce those whites to the tree as well. And here's one figure with a little boy, and here I am also introducing that fog color to it as well. And here's the story element, and it makes it pretty and meaningful rather than just having a mood painting. I'm paying great attention, and you can see that this is the final painting with, and looks very finished compared to other approaches. So let's jump to the next video. Hey everyone, this is a video on tonalism in an impressionistic manner. This one we are dealing with an impressionistic approach that might be useful when somebody is doing plein air painting maybe. So stay tuned. So here we are starting on a white piece of canvas, and that is the source photo that you are seeing on the left. I've mixed sort of a brown color, and brown color is easy to make with yellow and red, mixing an orange and then tone it down with a slight amount of blue. And it's just an indication which goes where. And this is, since this is going to be an impressionistic way of painting, I'm not too concerned about which goes where. So overall, I'm interested in overall feel, and this is such a little painting that it doesn't need much effort. So just to let you know that I'll be uploading several tonalism videos in the near future, and with different approaches, so that you get to know that tonalism is not just one way of painting, which is maybe the George Inness way or some other tonalists of America. There are many ways to do tonalism, and Europeans have done that, Impressionists have done that. So stay tuned for those. Here I'm covering things up, and it might be slightly difficult to understand why there is so much orange when we are talking about tonalism. Tonalist paintings in general, they are very moody in nature, but they can be golden, like the sunset, or maybe foggy paintings, or maybe morning silvery ones. So they can have any sort of color combination. Here you can see that I'm putting down now white mixed colors. They are not as orangey as it was previously. Even though tonalist paintings do have a lot of whites, especially in the silvery paintings, it's important that you don't use too much white in the beginning, except maybe the sky. It's better that you use pure colors and then cover it up with the regular white paint mixed with colors. Here I started painting the foliage, but eventually it will be quite an impressionistic one. Tonalist paintings mostly are very spiritual in nature, whereas Impressionist, as we know it, is a visual treatment. But there is some spiritual element to Impressionistic paintings. That's why we love them so much. And when we combine the two, the painting becomes an Impressionistic tonalist painting. And there are many other ways to do tonalistic paintings, but overall the sense is that it should be moody in nature, and it should have certain amount of melancholia, and slight amount of sadness. So it's not just about the style that one should look for, but rather how beautiful the painting is, whether it conforms to the generally accepted ideas of tonalism. Here you can see that I have covered the whole sky, and there is some fogginess into the scene, and there is some slight problem in the videography because of some light, but you can pretty well see what I'm doing. I'm using very thin down paint and painting the branches, and with this kind of pochade box, which is carrying like 5x7 or 4x6 panels, it's very easy to capture a very beautiful scene with maybe in support of a photograph, and you can have a good memory of that event, or maybe a mood that you experienced. And it doesn't take much. Maybe within half an hour you can do this painting. This painting took me half an hour. Now I'm going to make the ground even, but they will retain the impressionistic quality. And after the branches, I will put down the dry foliage that is there. This is very much winter. Hard to believe that this is afternoon and completely foggy. This was a scene that was taken in 2013 while I was traveling to train, and it was in Uttar Pradesh. Uttar Pradesh is a big state in India, so it takes quite a while to cover. So you can see that I have put down the foliage, and now it's just a matter of correction and additions, etc. Now I'm increasing the contrast a little, It's very difficult, but there is some contrasting elements to it, although they are in mostly mid-gray or slightly darker gray values. So here I'm diffusing the tonal contrast between the dark and light, but eventually some whites are also getting in, and eventually it'll have a wholesome effect, even though it seems slightly disjointed, but the values will be closer together. So here the foreground is more or less done, and it's just slight modifications here and there and adding some tonal contrast, etc. Now here I'm going to do something very bold with this little palette knife, modified palette knife, and I'm going to add some contrasting lighter marks, and this is very similar to the pastel paintings, and this is the final painting. If you like this video, then please click the like button and also subscribe, and also remember to click the bell icon. If you wish to see my other paintings or wish to communicate, then you can communicate here or through my website. So I thank you for your time and see you in the next. Hey guys, in today's video we are going to look at a very important artistic style that is known as tonalism, and we are going to discuss about some of the features that are involved in tonalism, and also paint this particular painting as an example. Obviously, tonalism artists were mostly landscape painters, but you can do portraits as well as still lifes with this kind of a style. Tonalism is a kind of art that focuses on mostly landscapes and other aspects of painting with kind of a tonal value to convey a particular kind of mood and an impression. Obviously, this kind of art appeared way before Impressionism. And tonalism is not an American concept. It was applied a little before the Americans took it. Barbizon school artists were mostly tonalists. And then in the US, various artists such as George Inness and James Whistler, they took it into another level, which is very, moody in nature. We're at this moment wiping as well as creating very abstract shapes with two or three colors just to arrive at something. This landscape is non-existent. It's just something that I'm trying to arrive at, just using various strokes and wiping the strokes. And for instance, there is a huge mass on the left hand side. I will remove that. Now I've removed it and it has become more open, and I'm creating some indication of water as well. So you can do it in this manner. Now, artists have this tendency to do bravura work rather than keeping themselves very, confined to the tightness of, composition as well as stroke making. Even Michelangelo, who was the biggest sculptor in the Renaissance, he also did somewhat abstract, sculptures at that moment. And then there were El Greco and Grunwald, who were also dealing with abstract imaginary forms. And here we are also doing the same. We are keeping the essence of the landscape, or maybe a portrait or a still life, but here we are including atmosphere into it. Here, the atmosphere is the most determinant factor, because this is how the mood of a particular landscape is determined, and you include poetic elements in it. Landscape is not just a copy of what you see, landscape is totally on the basis of what you feel. So that is how the greatest landscapes have been made, and this is another kind of painting style. And if you look at Constable's older paintings, they are also tonalism. There is Turner's abstract landscapes, they have tonal elements to it. So it's not just something that was, consciously arrived at, but there are many artists who had this idea of going beyond what they were just seeing. So you can see I'm becoming very abstract with palette knives, etc., and playing with the white paint, as well as darkening some of the areas. And this looks slightly greenish, but it's not greenish at all. It's Prussian blue. My intention here is to keep it as abstract as possible, and rather than keeping it very tight. And here I am using a lot of big brushes and palette knives, and not too carefully laid upon strokes. So this is how somewhat creating a controlled accidents to some degree, and this is how the shapes are determined. And there is some watery quality to the atmosphere that I'm creating with shimmering quality. So this is something that I do in my landscapes, but I generally don't do wet on wet in general. I prefer a layered method, and here I'm doing wet on wet and looking at the strokes pretty carefully, and trying not to ruin some of the shapes. Here I'm trying to create some amount of distinctive realistic features, the clouds, etc. And in a way, it's trying to create my own reality here. But there isn't much time. It's just finished within an hour at most. So within this time frame you can only get something abstract rather than anything concrete. But here the major focus is on the atmosphere rather than the composition, although you have to get to something else, especially in the foreground. And if you see many tonalist paintings, you will see that the foreground is actually very weak, especially in some of the cases of Barbizon artists, as well as the American artists as well. The foreground seems that they didn't find something to put. And this is something that if you can eradicate this, and I think you can produce a pretty good um, painting out of tonalism, and that could be timeless, and you can use modern elements in it. And even within the room there can be tonalist arrangements, and Whistler was a master at that. Whistler painted tonalist figures as well as portraits, etc. They were geniuses, but they were looking for something so that they could express what they were feeling inside. So this is how they arrived at that. These are one of those many steps that were taken to move towards modern art, rather than moving towards realism. They were moving towards abstract. And here I'm putting down some white marks from here and there, and trying to create some distance into the land. And here more white was added to create some shimmering effect. So this is a very abstract landscape painting, as you can see. And the water I'm painting, but it'll change its shape a little. But even if you move away from the regular tonalists like American artists, as well as the Barbizon school artists, there are many Russian artists that also painted tonalist landscapes. And when you add this sort of a lighting effect and also atmosphere into that sort of a vastness, it becomes something very grand. That's why we also enjoy the American Old West paintings, because they show that how world was previously before urbanization. And here it's more or less done. I just will refine the water a little bit. It was completely unnecessary, but I thought why not do it, to add some ripples to it. So, tonalism in itself is a kind of a mood that you need to express. That is the most important part. It has nothing to do with a country or a geography. It can be done in any sort of situation. Even in the case of still lifes, you can create tonalist still life. But here we are, following the general sense that it has been used again and again in the case of landscapes. And here I'm putting down a few marks to create the impression of the trees. The tonalism is a kind of impressionism in itself. Impressionism, the term, was actually stuck to the French impressionists and the followers of them. But this is again an impression. You're catching an impression. If you were outside and copying from nature, or interpreting nature, then you would follow an impressionistic method, and this is one of those. And so tonalism is an impressionism in a way, but there are various methods to add meaning to a particular landscape. It doesn't need to be just complete nature. You can add maybe a horse or a cow or anything, or human being, or even modern elements to it, to on the landscape part at this moment. And creating the trees with somewhat thin brush. Now focusing on the shapes rather than any kind of detail. Now looking at the water, first creating the branches of the trees, and will gradually add ripples to it. Now this is something that I wasn't sure about, but I just added, and I think it'll work. So this is a very loose kind of a painting, but you can further refine it with beautiful strokes when it's dry, and completely refine it. But at this moment, I think this is sufficient. Here, I'm just putting some fire to it. Somebody has lit fire, and this is the shot of the final painting. You notice the blues.